Montreal and Toronto often get the global investment headlines, but from your perspective in Edmonton, what is happening at Amy or in Alberta that the rest of the world is missing when it comes to the actual friction of implementing AI in the real world?
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement in Edmonton about AI. It's like you said, we've got the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, we've got U of A as a world leader in AI, and we've really been known for our fundamental work in AI research. And it's only more recently that we're gaining recognition for the work we're doing on actually implementing AI. So like at Amy, they work with a bunch of companies, anywhere from, they don't know anything about AI and they're trying to educate them and understand what AI can do, but also all the way up through, really experienced companies that just need some extra AI talent.
Like what is happening that, people don't really know about Alberta or Edmonton, in terms of implementing AI in the real world?
I'm not sure I know enough to answer that question.
We can go towards Canadian policy if you'd like, AI policies. If you could rewrite a single piece of Canadian AI policy based strictly on your experience of how humans actually interact with robots and agents, what's the first thing that you would do?
Yeah, I think we've still got a long way to go on AI policy. I'm not intimately familiar with what has been passed and what hasn't been passed yet, but I think we are trying to figure out how to balance keeping AI safe with making sure we don't stifle innovation. And right now, I don't think anyone really has that figured out. But I know that's something that a lot of people are working on and talking about, and I really trust that our leaders are listening to the experts that are actually working on this on a day-to-day basis.
What does it mean to keep AI safe?
Ooh, yeah, it really depends on who you're talking to, what that means. There's so many different aspects to AI safety. And for me, it's when I think about it, I think about empowering people to make the right decisions. So if AI is helping you do something, if AI is helping you make a loan, or decide who should win a prize, it's important that it doesn't just make the decisions for you, but that it helps you as a person implement your values and decide and make those decisions. So what does this mean in practice? Things like the AI needs to be explainable so that it's not a black box and people can understand why it's making the recommendations it makes. It also needs to be auditable. So when the AI makes a decision, you should be able to go back in time at any point in the future and understand why it did what it did, but also how you could have changed the outcome. So if someone is denied a loan, you need to be able to know, oh, it's because if their income was higher, it would have been accepted, and it's not something to do with their ethnicity.
So in the same domain as like explainability or auditability, I always hear these terms of like human centered. And I kind of sometimes scratch my head on what that precisely means. Is that something that you can measure? Like, what makes a system human centered? How do you actually measure that? Or is that just kind of like marketing fluff?
I wouldn't call it marketing fluff, but it's something that is hard to measure. And it's hard to say this is 70% human aligned and this is 85%. I think it's more of an end goal that the system is going to do what the human wants and expects. But I don't know that we've got a way to quantify that at the moment.
100%. And the inevitable next question for me is when we're talking about human centered, who is the human at the end of the equation? Is it like a high end customer or a CEO? What are your thoughts on that? And in overall AI research, who is the end person? Is it society or is it a group of people? Tinfoil hat, we call them the elites, for example. I'm not gonna go there. But like who is the human in human centered?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it completely depends on who you're talking to. So if we're thinking about the big U.S. tech companies, then we're thinking more about, I think about more the tech CEO and how they're going to make money.
Right.
Um, so the phrase I've heard is, if you aren't paying for software, that means you're the product, not the
Right.
customer. And when you're thinking about all of this cool AI that you can get online for free, these companies aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. That said, I think people are realizing that we need to understand who's benefiting from AI. I personally would like it to be everyone. I mean, I have no problems with companies making money with AI, but that should also be benefiting their users, should also be benefiting society in general. And I think there's a much bigger discussion we should have about should our society be prioritizing huge AI data centers? Or are there other things that that energy and money should be going to? But ultimately, it's for us as a society to decide who should benefit from this technology.
And this is kind of like the emotional conversation I wanted to have with folks like yourself because you were in the space before the chat GPTs of the world, before the entire world was so obsessed and, seemingly overnight, like warped around the industry. Just if we can take a step back from the technical perspective, just talk to the human. What did that feel like when everyone was looking forward to and paying attention to this research community and to this industry back from, people expected AI to be a big deal. Now AI is just the deal. What were the emotions that went on with that?
I think the biggest one was surprise. I mean, I first started learning about AI in 2000, and I've been working on it full time since 2003, and I was always doing it because it was fun and interesting. If you really wanted to do something impactful, you should work in cybersecurity or networking or, the AI was never the hot thing. It was always, something that was just cool. And then seeing it pick up steam and seeing the community, the business community realize that it wasn't all hype, that it could actually produce results. And then just seeing that snowball rolling downhill, it started getting a little scary to see how fast people were latching on and how hot it was growing without not everyone necessarily knowing what it meant. You could see companies and people just kind of jumping onto the keywords without understanding the fundamentals.
This is gonna be stupid to say, but I kind of liken it to like, when you're a kid and you're the one that has the soccer ball and it's your ball and everybody's playing with you. I always found like, when other people were treating the ball as their own, there was kind of a little bit of jealousy. Like, hey, that's not yours. You're just here to take advantage of the situation. And I'm not a researcher, but I kind of feel the same thing of there are a lot of like AI practitioners around that talk a lot about AI, but don't really care about what they're saying. They're not trying to go deeper. They're just trying to make a pile of money. What was the emotion like when you're talking about, the business community latching on to it and just using keywords? It was probably, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I can only impute that maybe there was an air of annoyance or an air of like, hey, let's halt the brakes on that. You guys are not getting the full picture.
Yeah, definitely, because you'll see people at conferences, they talking about AI and they're an AI expert, and then they might not have any background, which is okay, but then they might not know the fundamentals, and then it's hard to trust their conclusions if they can't really back them up. So I like the soccer ball analogy. I mean, the first thing was I didn't realize other people would like my soccer ball so much, and then thinking about are they actually contributing to and building the community? Or is this just the latest thing that people latch onto? A few years ago, it was blockchain.
Right.
And then is there going to be a huge surge? All these people come in, and then a few years later they leave. That's probably not going to leave the community in a great state. So I'm thinking about this as a long term. What is the AI community going to look like 10 or 20 years from now? And we want to build up a community that is supportive and understanding, and not just people looking to make a quick buck.
Exactly. Or just to try to get famous off of a couple of things. There's also that. There's like this social climbing atmosphere that people are just coming in to, raise their, social status, if you will, and then leave for their own intellectual pursuit, which I find kind of strange because if you're making your bones in an industry, you want to stay with the industry, or at least you want to help prop up the industry. But you talked about the community. Where do you see the AI community actually going? So if we can just tell maybe two or three stories. So one is this goes on forever. The other is This goes on and it kind of simmers down. We don't go into an AI winter, maybe like an AI autumn. And the next thing is it completely plummets. I'm not going to ask you to expound on any of those, but where do you lean towards?
The way I think about the AI community, so I just was helping to organize the AAAI conference. So we had about 10,000 people attend the conference.
Oh, wow.
And there you've got a combination of people like Ed Feigenbaum, Turing Award winner from back in the day, and you've got these experienced people who are continuing to come to this conference even after they retire.
Mhm.
And because they're interested and they want to see their friends and they want to catch up on what's the latest and greatest. And that core of the community, I think, is always going to be there because there's enough people that are interested and committed.
Mhm.
Now the question is, what happens as other people come in and out of the community? So if we get a huge influx of people who want to learn, that's great. You get a huge influx of people that, want to get famous or make a bunch of money and then leave, that's going to be a strain on the community. So where I don't see any risk of the core interest fading away.
Mhm.
I think what you will see is we'll probably get fewer fortune seekers once the AI wave crests,
Right.
and you'll probably also see less funding, which is something to be worried about. So Canada does a great job on funding fundamental AI research. It has
Mhm.
for years, and I don't see that going away. But right now, it is fairly easy to get academic funding because there's so many companies interested in it as well. And that is likely to die down once the AI rush is over and we get into a more steady state.
Let's step back into the research avenue just for a minute because how did the nature of your role change? Because before it was kind of like, again, a bunch of analogies. You're the girl with the braces on in high school, and then you get the braces off, and then suddenly everybody is paying attention to you, right? And in the analogy, it's not like you're gonna get the braces on, but like let's just say high school will end eventually, and all that attention will stop, or at least kind of die down and come to an equilibrium. So when did that actually happen? Was it as ChatGPT was released, or was it a little bit before or a little bit after? And then how did that change the nature of your role?
Yeah. And I was a number of years I was talking to a funder in the US government who, was able to fund these multi-million dollar research initiatives. And he was like, yeah, I know what it's like to be the prettiest girl in the room.
Mm.
And I think it was changing around the time that DeepMind was making all these really flashy advances. So for me, I think it really happened around the time of AlphaGo,
Mhm.
where their program was able to beat one of the world's best Go players because that was something that I hadn't expected for another 10 or 15 years. And just having that happen was a surprise to me. And then just seeing it be taken up in the popular press and there's a buzz in the air. And that's when I think things really started to change. But the for people who have like myself who have gone through this, it was great to get all this attention and more funding and more excitement. And we know that it's not always going to be like that. Trends come and go. So for us doing research, the key is to keep making those core contributions so that when you become less popular, when your research isn't as buzzworthy, you're still doing good fundamental science. So you can still help push the field forward. You still know you're making a long-term impact, whatever is happening, in the popular press this week.
One of the things that I was always wondering about is, as a researcher, how difficult is it now to stay focused on fundamental research? Because there seems like I won't use the term distractions, but a lot of outside interests that kind of want a piece of everything that you do. Like there's always a pound of flesh to be had or a lion's share to give. Is that impacting your day to day at all, or are you still able to stay focused and just do the work?
Yeah, that's interesting. So the way the way I was explained how what being a professor is it's like you're going to the dessert buffet and there are so many tasty things and your plate is only so big. So you can try stacking things on top of each other, but eventually something's going to fall off. So as a professor, you think about service. So that's helping your institution, helping the scientific community. There's teaching and there's research. So already you're balancing different things. And then when the research comes in, you can work on fundamental stuff, you can work on applied stuff, you can work on your own just by yourself, you can work in a large team or with a company. So I feel like there's always too many amazing things that we could be doing. And this is really just more now because there's so many companies and people interested in it, there's so many more opportunities. But shoot, my plate is only so big.
Right.
So I have to constantly prioritize and turn things down.
There's also this aspect of when we're talking about the community. I think it's not just you, but a lot of people in the community are also saying, yeah, it's not just that we expect the AI autumn to come, but we want it in some way because we actually don't want all of these annoying outside interests. We don't want the money people, not just the money people. We don't want the social climbers. We just want to stay focused on what we want to do and what we want to research and pushing forth um, the discipline of AI. And so, in some way, getting more attention actually leads to more distraction in some way. Just speaking a little bit more abstractly, just curious if you've thought about this. How do you make the community resilient to that? Is it through discussion? Is it through protocols? Is it through something else?
Well, I think part of what you say resilient to it, I think it's the community needs to decide what it prioritizes. And if it's raising funding so that we can fund as many students as possible, that's one possible goal. Another is to say that, we really want this moonshot. We want AGI. How can we make that happen in the next 15 years?
Right.
Or it can be we really want to understand how machines learn, how they can learn better, how they can learn more like people. And then it's more about understanding rather than producing. But we as a community get to decide what we value. And as in any good sized community, there's got to be disagreement and discussions, and different people will emphasize different things. But yeah, I think having those conversations is part of what we do. And it's up to everyone, every researcher to figure out what they value and what how they want to make an impact.
Do you think that there are advantages to having a unified framework for Canada, or should there be pockets like the Edmonton pocket, the Vancouver pocket, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa?
Well, since trying to get academics to agree to something is kind of like herding cats, I think that could be pretty difficult. I think if you as soon as you tell someone here's what you need to do, most academics will revolt at that. That said, I think the more, if not unification, if the more discussion and cross collaboration, I think the more opportunities for that, absolutely for the better, because we want these different ideas and goals and research to discuss to intermingle. And if people are isolated in that their own bubble, then you never have those conversations. So that's been one of the things that CFAR has been really good at, is trying to encourage these discussions across Canada among AI researchers.
And when we're talking about Canada, we're talking about, the country and also the people inside of it. Are there other actors, interests that try to misinform, corrupt the message, that try to, inject certain things to sway people one way or the other?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We've been working on a foreign influence project where we're looking at those kinds of outside interests that could try to sway Canadians. So, for instance, Russia spends something around $2 billion each year on foreign influence, and we've seen that some of that is absolutely pointed at Canada.
Mhm.
And so far, they haven't been attacking AI itself, but they certainly could. Um, they've been We've been looking at how they have pushed the far left and the far right to become more radicalized, and trying to see, like, is there foreign influence in the Alberta referendum? We're trying to detect that. So it's interesting to see how AI can help people spread misinformation and disinformation. It can, produce false images, and at the same time, AI can also be a tool to defend against that.
What does foreign influence from Russia on Canada look like? Is it, like, is it just showing like AI generated pictures of Mark Carney showing up in my Instagram feed, or is it something a little bit more sinister, like pulling the country apart in some way?
Yeah, it definitely spans the gamut. But think about trying to sway Canadians against the war in Ukraine. That's something that we see. So how can they do that? They can come up with narratives like, oh, Ukraine is full of Nazis and Russia invaded to try to denazify Ukraine. So we can see that kind of narrative that's pushed, and it's amplified inside of Canada so that the goal is to sow dissatisfaction with supporting Ukraine. But there's also just the general sense of trying to instigate people to fight. So trying to get the far left to hate the current politicians or the far right to hate current things that the federal government is doing, because our adversaries want that kind of discontent. And the more they can do to weaken Canada, then the better it will be for them.
And how does AI come into this equation? Is it just because they're able to utilize, like AI systems to generate this misinformation and distribute it en masse, or are they actually targeting AI systems in general?
Yeah, so right now we believe it's mostly they're using AI to amplify and create this kind of for these foreign influence operations. And then on the defensive side, what we're doing is actually working with experts who understand this space, and our job is to just help them understand this foreign influence better. So for instance, Marcus Kolga is a collaborator. He works on Russian disinformation in Canada, and he used to go out and have to spend a number of hours every morning reading a bunch of articles to understand like what's new, what's happening. And that's something that AI is great at. You can throw hundreds of articles at AI, and it can help summarize and understand and analyze what's changing over time. And that really helps people like him to do this job much better. And going back to what you're saying earlier about human aligned, in that case, we really want to create a system that works for him so that he can produce his it's called Disinfo Watch. So he has a website where he talks about different types of disinformation and how things are changing. So our system helps him produce those outputs much faster, and he's able to analyze many more websites through use of AI.
Is this something that's going to continue happening? Like, is this something that we have to continue dealing with, or is there a way to stop it? Not just in the context of AI, but in general. Is there a way to in the context of AI, is there a way to use AI to stop this completely? Like, is there, by now, like a Russian disinformation detector? Like,
So I think of this as like similar to the arms race between the white hat and black hat hackers. So when you have a bank, it's secured with various protocols, the online banking website, but there's bad guys that are going to try to break in. The bad guys are always getting new tools, which means the good guys also need to get these new tools. So as at least for the foreseeable future, I don't see this kind of threat going away. I think we need to understand what our adversaries are trying to do to us and actively counter that.
copy that. And it's also about, I think, education for folks. If we're able to, I'm gonna ask you a very abstract question right now, but it'll be a fun abstract question. Just getting back into AI research, what is the goal now? So, from my understanding, artificial intelligence research was always towards AGI. Now I can stop there and just let you answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's been a portion of the community that's interested in AGI, and I think that has always been there. But I don't think that's the majority of people, or at least it's
Gotcha.
not the majority of people that I talk with. So for instance, the for me the fundamental thing I'm interested in is the um, sense, plan, act loop. So like a robot in the real world needs to understand what's around it, needs to sense. Then based on what it knows and what it understands, it needs to figure out what it wants to do,
Mhm.
and then it actually needs to do that. And people have been working on this for decades, and everyone keeps thinking that the robots are right around the corner. And it's still like the robots we have right now still have a lot of room to grow. So for me and a good chunk of the community, that's one thing we're interested in, and it's not so much AGI. But there's other people who are most interested in multi-agent interactions. So figuring out how to set up good systems for auctioning off broadband spectrum,
Mhm.
or how to set up good safe voting strategies so that we better understand how to avoid voter manipulation.
Mhm.
So, there's all these different goals in the different sub communities of AI. So it really depends on who you talk to.
In the context of robotics, a question popped into my cranium, which was, when you're pursuing really interesting research, we'll double click on robotics right now. There's been this narrative that's been pushed out that, the number one, as you said, the robots are right around the corner. But as soon as that happens, society changes and we live in a utopia because all the robots are going to do all these jobs and everybody's going to be eating bacon and avocados every day or whatever they say, right? And so, well, if you're not vegetarian, then it's just avocados for you. Um, but when you're pursuing interesting research, is there a question in the back of your mind on like the social responsibility of what you're doing? And how does that come into play? Is there ever like a line of research that you want to partake in, but you're like, you know what? If we're successful in this, society might change in a way that doesn't benefit everybody. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a tough question. For two reasons. So there are mechanisms to force researchers to think about this because it's very easy to just ignore it. So one thing you might see is, oh, I'm an AI researcher, but really it's just applied math. I can't control what this is going to be used for. That's not my job.
Mhm.
And one place we saw this fail was the computer vision community spent years working on facial recognition, and there was really no discussion about how this could be used to track people and enforce policies if enough facial recognition cameras are up. So we're trying to do a better job thinking about that. My personal take is most of what I do could be used by bad people to do bad things, and there's only so much I can do to counter that. That said, I personally would not work on um, putting AI on weapon systems. So for me, that's a red line. But for other people, you're right. Like some people would not want to work on drones at all because we know that drones can be an offensive weapon,
Mhm.
and maybe you don't want to directly contribute to that at all.
And what if you just don't know? Like what if the question is still up in the air? Because it would be kind of stupid for somebody to say, I'm not going to pursue this because of the possible downsides. Well, then we're not going to pursue anything at all.
Yeah, that's very true. And so you can't know the future. But you can think about how the tech you're working on could be used or misused, and then trying to understand on balance of probabilities, how likely is it that this could happen, and what would that impact be? And people might make those estimates differently, and they might have different tolerances.
Mhm.
But so for instance, when I submit a grant proposal, I have to explicitly talk about who my partners are and could this be used for bad things.
Right.
So when at the proposal stage, when we're trying to raise money, we have to do this in many papers. There's a section where you're encouraged to write what are the ethical implications of this research.
Mhm.
And it's like I said, some people just say, "Oh, I'm just doing applied math. It doesn't matter to me." but I think more the community is now taking those questions seriously and trying to think about when we're deciding what to work on, how much should the ethical impact factor into making the decision, is this something I want to work on or not?
There's also another question that's circulating around my mind, or around my brain rather, which is we were talking about robots. Why is it that everybody always has, like, why is it that the robots are always going to come very, very soon? It's always, there's never, like, obviously it's the headline issue, like it's the clickbait thing, and I get that, but it's never like, the robots are going to take another 10 to 15 years, and that's okay. I don't know what your timelines are, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to the very beginning of robotics, I think it was out at Stanford. They were talking about solving the vision problem over the summer, which instead took decades.
Mhm.
And I think part of the thing with about robotics is until you become a roboticist, it's very hard to anticipate what's easy and what's hard. And even roboticists sometimes get surprised that, you thought this thing would take a week, and actually it's a 3-year research project.
Oh wow.
So everything is just harder than it seems. But also, I think you're right that it's easy to get people excited about robotics. I mean, they look awesome. The videos that people come out with are amazing. So
Right.
it's easy to get people excited, and that hype cycle, feeds upon itself, trying to say, we just need a little more funding. We just need a little more time or resources, and then we'll be able to do this amazing thing. And it's hard to predict if and when that amazing thing is going to happen, but there's every incentive for companies certainly to say, "Oh, it's right around the corner."
Let's talk about companies. What's the biggest disconnect between, high level research and engineers actually trying to build these systems for a company or to commercialize them?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, companies do a lot of great research, and engineers in academia do good research too. Um, but I think one of the things I've seen is with the companies, it's hard to make the robots commercially viable. So even if you can get them working, it's still hard to get them working in a robust way and that's a cost effective. So we've had robots in automotive plants for decades, right? And they're a huge cost saver, and they work really well because they're in a very structured environment and they can do exactly the same thing all day, every day. But as soon as you're in an unstructured environment and there's people in the picture, then it's you either have a robot that can't perform or you have a robot that has to be super expensive.
Right.
And it's hard to make that super expensive robot efficient. So one place where we're starting to see more robots actually work are things like Bear Robotics, who make a server that goes around a restaurant bringing out food.
Mm.
So, because in restaurants, the wait staff spends a lot of their time just walking from the kitchen to the table and back.
Right.
So, if you can have a robot bring the stuff out, then the server can actually focus on just the interaction at the table. So, a restaurant is a fairly well-structured environment, and most of the people walking around are staff so that they can be trained. So that's a way where you can have a relatively low-cost robot that actually provides quite a bit of value.
Speaking of that, I really want to zoom in on that scenario. A lot of people, myself included in some respects, believe that introducing more technology fundamentally takes away humanity. And in this scenario specifically, it doesn't seem like that's the case. It actually seems like you get more humanity if the robot is like filling in all the noisy gaps, if you want to call them that. What is your take on this? Is there water in this argument?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, you're with AI and robotics, we want to let humans do what they're good at and let the robots do what they're good at. So if you want that human interaction, I think that's what servers are great at. They're making your meal experience better. But that said, there's also going to be, I mean, we see robots that are doing cooking, um, see robotic cashiers. I expect that there will also be places where it's fully automated, because, some days you just want to grab your food and go, or you want to grab your food and have a quiet meal and you really don't want to talk to people. And the market can decide which of those ideas is going to succeed or in what proportion.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, wax poetic just for a second, but it does seem like it would take something away. Like there have been countless people that have gone to the grocery store and seen their future spouse or, locked eyes with somebody at the cashier and, fallen in love. And that's why it's their favorite grocery store. And if we're taking that away, it does seem like something is lost. But at the same time, in the same breath, I do have to say, you feel free to comment on this if it piques your interest. Um, I do see that a lot of people are quite unhappy working those jobs. And so taking those jobs away, or yeah, it sounds strange to say take the jobs away. Not needing people to fill those jobs means that we would be forced to innovate on new jobs, more fulfilling jobs, more creative jobs. Is that a healthy and appropriate way to look at this, or am I just waxing poetical?
No, I think that's right because with technology changes, we're going to make some jobs more or less valuable.
Mhm.
And that's what's happened in the past with the Industrial Revolution. We changed the distribution of jobs. My understanding is there weren't a whole lot of people working in massage therapy. And now it's relatively easy to go down the street when your back hurts and find someone to give you a massage. So that was something that wasn't super valued before, and now people actually value it. So I don't have any doubt that AI is going to take away jobs or automate away jobs, but I also am confident that new jobs will emerge. And ideally, they will be things that not only are people better at the machines, but ideally they'll also be jobs that people enjoy more. Um, I knew someone who worked in a factory for a summer, and his job was to push a button, which made a screwdriver come down and screw a particular screw. And then the next item would come along, and he'd push the button. And he said it was the most mind-numbingly painful, boring job that he's ever had. And I'm so glad that kind of job can now be automated away.
Right, right. It's just about how we're thinking about it, which comes back to you and your community and your research. What is it like holding the power, you know, for those downstream?
I laugh because I often feel powerless. Um,
Say more about that. Why do you feel powerless?
um, because most of my work is on fundamental research, which could be used by someone else in 5 to 10 years to do something. So that's why it feels like a lot of the papers we write have little impact.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I also like doing applied research, where we can try to harden our information space against foreign influence. Like that's something where we can see making a change in society, in the next few weeks.
Right.
But I think a lot of the papers we publish and the fundamental research is, years away from having that impact, and it's not really clear how it's going to be impactful. It really depends on who ends up having the power in their hands to use it. So it's going to be the companies and the governments, not the independent researcher.
Not that you're suggesting this, but is there a suggestion that AI researchers should have more of a say on, hey, don't do that with my research? Would that be a healthy way to combat this?
I kind of think of that like the different licenses you can have in software. So like, oh, you can use this for anything as long as it's not commercial versus, you can put this software on absolutely anything. And I think that would be interesting if we could have those kinds of licenses for fundamental research.
Like research licenses. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem with research licenses, I mean, with software, it's either you use a software package or not. And if you choose not to, you have to write something yourself.
Right.
With research, it's more about here's this awesome idea, and it's not so difficult to take someone else's idea and tweak it and incorporate it into your own. So it would be very hard to regulate and even detect. But I think that is an interesting idea.
Isn't that why patents exist? Like can't you patent research in some way?
You can patent systems. So we've had a few patents where for ideas that we thought were worth protecting. But in general, you can't patent an algorithm,
Mm.
and you can't patent abstract knowledge. So as soon as that knowledge is out there, like it's it's gone. It can be used however people want to.
So, again, we're just riffing right now. We're in talks about trying to figure out how to design a system where you can license research and also protect it from being infringed upon, since research is fundamentally at its core just an idea. Interesting. I want to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and I'd be interested if there is appetite for that. Because most of the researchers I know, and I feel this way, like I want my research to be out there. So like a lot of what I publish is published in places that are free to access.
Mhm.
Because I want everyone to be able to read my stuff, whether they can afford to have a subscription to a particular journal or not. So I think a lot of us have that, information wants to be free mentality, which is in conflict of here's this information and you can only use it to do X, Y, or Z.
right. I think more power needs to be given to researchers. And also, this is something I would also like to talk to you about, and it's kind of meta that I ask this. Do you think researchers should speak out more on these things? Like, is like there's a beauty in the researchers kind of like being introverts and just being in the lab and doing their thing, but I also kind of want them to say, "Hey, we don't agree with this, like at all, and we don't want to pursue these lines of research at all." Is that again a healthy, fair ask, or is that just naive because no funding would come?
No, I think that's a fair ask. Um, I think it can be difficult to see if and where your research was used, and it's certainly hard to keep up with how
Yeah.
companies are doing different things. But in cases where something seems unethical, if I saw someone building on my research in an unethical way, I would probably want to speak out about it if I identified it.
It seems like there's just so much going on. How do you manage your day-to-day stress levels when it comes to, the entire AI community? Because it feels like every hour there's some type of new thing, new breakthrough. Are you able to cut through the noise? Or is it something where you're still, it's in the back of your mind of, I wonder what came out today?
So it definitely feels like drinking from the fire hose.
Hmm.
And it absolutely feels overwhelming with the amount of new, interesting research. But thinking about it a little bit more, like there's at least since I've been working in research, there's always been more stuff coming out than I could feasibly learn about. So it's a problem of magnitude, not a fundamental shift.
Oh, just to end off, here's a last very fun question for you. How long until there's an actual AI researcher? Like an AI that can do AI research. When is that going to happen?
We have some now. We
Hmm.
have programs that do automated research. The thing is, right now, my understanding is that these automated scientists don't have a way of understanding what's super interesting or going to be impactful. So like if you talk to a mathematician, they've got a way of saying, "Oh, this proof is elegant versus this proof is brute force." And they have this, this shared community intuition on the values of what makes something beautiful. And it's kind of the same with AI. The community has a way of saying, "Oh, this type of research is really interesting and this type of research is boring." And it's hard to kind of convey those values to a machine.
For
That
sure.
actually comes back to your human aligned. So can we come up with AI scientists that are aligned with what the AI or the research community finds interesting? I think that'll be a really interesting next step.
Can we create AIs that are aligned with themselves? I love it. Right. No, I love it. Um, Professor, just two more questions for you. If you had a magic wand and you could solve one problem in the world, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. There's so many problems in the world. I have no idea. I'm just there's yeah, that's an overwhelming question.
Well, is there one particular that's on your mind? Something day to day, something personal, close to home. Snowfall in Edmonton doesn't count.
No. Okay, so for personal and close to home, I wish we had a way of better housing and supporting people who are unhoused.
I've been interested in this. I'll follow up with you offline about this because I've been talking to some interesting folks. And the last question is, what gives you hope in the world?
Gives me hope. I see a lot of good people that care about the community and are doing things for the community and not themselves. So I see this in the AI community. I see this at the university. I see this in Edmonton. Just seeing people that are doing things that are, if not selfless, at least really beneficial for others gives me hope that we as a species will be able to pull through.
I love it. Professor, where can we find you online? Keep up to date with your work. Where can we access your research?
Well, you should definitely come to my research homepage. I run the Intelligent Robot Learning Lab. So if you go to irll.ca, you can see some of the cool stuff we're doing.
Wonderful. Those will be in the show notes. Professor, thank you so much for today.
It's great talking to you. I think you do a really nice job of interviewing.